After guiding Mandy and Kim Sang-sik to their quarters, Cha Dong-seok came outside. There was no room to doubt their identities. Kim Sang-sik's access card had been decisive. The problem was Zeon. How to treat an awakened from the slums was entirely up to him.
They must have trained him properly by now.
They had worked together for a long time. With one look in his eyes, they knew what Cha Dong-seok wanted. They would have thoroughly beaten Zeon into shape on their own. It was not that he bore any particular grudge against Zeon. This sort of thing happened all the time in Neo-Seoul. There was a widespread belief that awakened from the slums, in particular, had to be handled harshly and have their spirit broken. Even if a problem arose because of this incident, those above would not question him. He arrived in front of the shabby lodging house where Zeon had been taken. But it was strangely quiet.
Surely those bastards didn't kill him, did they?
Feeling uneasy, Cha Dong-seok threw the door open. The moment he saw the inside of the lodging house, Cha Dong-seok doubted his own eyes. An unbelievable scene had unfolded before him. One of his subordinates groaned.
Captain.
Another groaned in anguish. All his subordinates had collapsed on the floor, groaning. Each of them was crawling over the floor with an arm or leg bent in a grotesque direction. In the middle of it all was Zeon. Zeon sat in a chair and looked at Cha Dong-seok.
Welcome.
What the hell? Why are they?
Startled, Cha Dong-seok drew his sword. The sharp scrape of the blade echoed against its sheath. Zeon rose from the chair and approached Cha Dong-seok. Cha Dong-seok aimed his sword at Zeon's neck.
Did you do this to them?
They tried to look at someone else's rank insignia without permission.
You did this to them for a reason as pathetic as that, you son of a bitch.
If you swing that sword, your wrist won't be safe either.
Do you think you can enter Neo-Seoul after doing this?
It doesn't matter as long as I don't enter Neo-Seoul itself. I'll be staying in the slums.
Cha Dong-seok growled and gritted his teeth. Neo-Seoul and the slums were attached to each other, but they were effectively separate districts. Unless something unusual happened, Neo-Seoul did not interfere in the affairs of the slums. Interfering would only bring more troublesome problems. Because of that, they acknowledged a certain degree of autonomy there. Zeon approached right in front of Cha Dong-seok's nose. They were close enough to feel each other's breath, so Cha Dong-seok could see Zeon's eyes. Deep black eyes that felt strangely dry. At that instant, Cha Dong-seok felt a chill. Just meeting Zeon's eyes made his mind reel, as if his soul were falling into an abyss. This feeling was a first for him. He had never felt this way, even from high-ranking awakened in Neo-Seoul. Although he was only grade D, he was still a veteran who had gone through all kinds of rough work. The moment he realized something had gone wrong, he hurriedly changed his attitude.
I apologize. You should have told me you were a high-ranking awakened.
Mandy and Mr. Kim Sang-sik vouched for me, but it seems you've already forgotten.
That is, I apologize.
When it was time to lower one's head, one had to lower it properly. Cha Dong-seok made no further excuses and apologized clearly. It was not as though his subordinates' level was terribly low. They were all grade D or grade E awakened. People like that had been defeated miserably by Zeon, without managing to inflict a single wound. If the situation would not change, even if he stepped forward, then it was right to bury everything here and withdraw. Fortunately, Zeon had no intention of making the problem any larger than this.
Then there's no problem between us, right?
Was there any problem?
That's a relief. At least you're someone I can talk to.
I'll move you to another lodging.
No, this is more than enough.
Still.
I'd like to be alone now.
Understood. Then please rest comfortably.
Cha Dong-seok bowed his head deeply to Zeon, then shouted at his subordinates.
Hey, you bastards! Are you not getting up? Everyone, get up already!
His subordinates groaned as they struggled to their feet. Cha Dong-seok went outside with them. Once the sound of people had disappeared outside, Zeon murmured.
Now I can finally rest a little.
It was an initiation rite he had to go through, anyway. If he could get past it with only this much, then it was not a bad thing for him either. Zeon sat in the chair and looked around the inside of the lodging house. Then he suddenly chuckled.
This is the place.
It was the lodging house where he had stayed when he had come to the Mana Stone mine 8 years ago. Since nothing had changed, he recognized it immediately. He had slept here for one night, then been dragged straight to the Mana Stone mine. There he had fallen into a dungeon, and 8 years had passed. Now Zeon was no longer a child, nor was he going to work in the mine. Yet being here somehow made him feel as though he had to enter the Manastone mine.
Come to think of it, that old man was here too.
The old swindler who had charged him no less than 10 sol for one meal and had robbed him of a Manastone worth 300 sol for a mere 100 sol. In exchange, he had received the hourglass and obtained Exion, but the fact that Xion had been swindled did not change. Even though a long time had passed, he remembered the old man's face vividly.
He said his name was Klexi, didn't he? Maybe I should see his face for the first time in a while.
There was nothing for him to do inside anyway. Xion went outside. Fortunately, perhaps because Chadong Siok had told them in advance, no one picked a fight with him or blocked his way. Thanks to that, Xion was able to reach the area where old man Klexi had done business without trouble. This place had hardly changed either. The moment Xion appeared, merchants emerged here and there.
Come over this way.
I've got good goods here.
You look like a complete greenhorn. Get yourself equipped here before you go.
The merchants' eyes gleamed with greed. They had taken Xion for a novice and were trying to fleece him somehow. This was everyday life here. One had to keep one's wits sharp. If one was swept along carelessly, one would be stripped bare, hide and all. Xion ignored their calls and looked around, but Klexi was nowhere to be seen. With no other choice, he approached one of the merchants trying to lure him.
Let me ask you something.
You can ask 10 questions if you want, as long as you buy something of mine.
If there's anything worth buying, I will.
Good. Ask away.
Where did old man Klexi go? I'm sure he used to do business here.
That old man? He packed everything up and went into Neo's soul not long ago.
So he isn't dead.
You'll have to wait several more decades for that old man to die. He's that hale and hearty.
I see.
Now, pick something. I'll give it to you cheap.
The merchant answered carelessly and spread both arms wide. Behind him, countless items were packed tightly together. Xion looked through them, wondering if there might be something like the hourglass from which he had obtained Exon. But there was nothing he liked.
They're all things I don't need. I'll be going.
Don't be like that. Buy one thing. I said I'd give it to you cheap.
The merchant grabbed Xion's shoulder roughly. There was an unspoken rule that anyone who entered this district could not leave empty-handed. One had to buy at least something before leaving. Of course, it was a rule the merchants had made among themselves. But Xion lightly ignored that rule.
No, thank you. Why would I buy trash?
What? Trash? You bastard.
The merchant glared. Inwardly, he thought this had worked out nicely. He intended to use this as an excuse to squeeze a fortune out of Xion. He put strength into the hand gripping Xion's shoulder. At that instant, Xion clicked his tongue.
Did you never learn what happens when you touch someone else's body carelessly?
What did you say, you bastard?
A sickening crack and crunch echoed. The merchant cried out in agony. Under tremendous pain, the merchant grabbed his wrist and collapsed. His wrist had been broken and was dangling loose. Xion had broken it.
That's how your wrist breaks.
You son of a bitch.
The merchant screamed reflexively. Then the surrounding merchants gathered one by one. They were naturally creating an atmosphere of fear. Because of this atmosphere, people who came here for the first time ended up being stripped of everything down to their underwear, just as the old Xion had been. But the current Xion was not the awkward novice he had once been. Xion rolled up his sleeve, revealing the gauntlet on his fist. At that, the approaching merchants flinched. Ordinary people almost never wore armaments like gauntlets. Only awakened wore such weapons. In other words, this young man wearing a playful smile was an awakened. One merchant muttered.
Come to think of it, I left my shop open.
Another called out.
I forgot I left a pot on the fire.
A third grimaced.
Ouch, my leg.
The merchants pretended to be busy with other things and returned to their shops. At that, the merchant with the broken wrist looked betrayed, but this was reality. Even if dozens of ordinary people gathered, they could not handle a single awakened. If he wanted to blame someone, he had to blame his own carelessness in trying to fleece someone without realizing he was an awakened.
Damn it.
His eyes filled with tears. Xion crouched down and met his gaze.
Then we should settle the bill.
The bill? What kind of bullshit is that? You broke someone's arm?
Come on. Why are you acting like this? You were the one who treated me like a sucker first. You tried to treat an awakened like a sucker and got hurt. So isn't it a little wrong to look so wronged?
The merchant could only growl in response.
Let's keep the calculation simple. 100 sol. Just 100 sol, and I'll forget everything that happened today.
100 sol was the money old man Klexi had given him when he had robbed him of the Mana Stone long ago. It had been an item worth at least 300 sol, yet it had been taken from him for only 100. Back then, he had been robbed helplessly because he had no experience and nowhere to go. But now the situation was different. Xian looked at the merchant with a grin. But to the merchant, his smile became immense pressure. Damn it, he wasn't a sucker. He was a reaper. There was nowhere he could go to complain about his injustice. This was the Mana Stone mine, a place where if you failed to strip someone, you had nothing to say, even if you were stripped bare instead. The one who was caught was the fool. With his good hand, he took out 100 sol. The hand that handed the money to Xian trembled. It felt so wasteful that tears of blood might pour from his eyes. But Xian accepted the money coldly.
Thank you. Thanks to you. I won't have to worry about money for a while. Is there anyone else willing to touch me? It would be nice if there were.
Xian tucked the money into his clothes and muttered. At the sight of Xian, the merchant trembled. This bastard is a demon. He fleeced a merchant like me. Leaving the merchant staring blankly in despair behind, Xian leisurely left the market district. Quite a lot had happened on his first day at the Mana Stone mine. Thanks to that, it was good that he had not been bored. Xian slowly strolled through the mining city. Since most of the miners had not yet come out of the mine shafts, the city was quiet. Even so, quite a few people were moving through the streets. It had been a long time since he had seen so many people all at once. Xian simply sat down on one side of the street and watched the people passing by. It was not perfect, but he could truly feel that he had stepped onto the threshold of the civilized world. This is nice. 3 days had passed since Xian entered the Mana Stone mine city. During that time, Xian had done nothing in particular. He walked through the streets or sat in alleys, watching people pass by. To anyone watching, it looked like the daily life of an unemployed man with nothing to do. It was the exact opposite of the busy scenery of the Mana Stone mine city. At first, there had been people who looked at Xian with displeasure. But since they knew Chadong Siok's subordinates had been smashed by Xian, no one rashly picked a fight with him. At least Neo Soul had some minimal regulations. In the Mana Stone mine, even that did not apply. The Mana Stone mine was a place where the strong trampling the weak and taking everything from them was tolerated. People recognized Xian as one of the strong. They did not know the true extent of his martial power, but it was at least certain that he was stronger than Chadong Siok. A martial type awakened of at least grade D. Grade D might not sound like much, but even if one searched all of Neo Soul, there were not even 1,000 of them. They were a precious force. Considering that most of the awakened dispatched to the Mana Stone mine were grade E or grade F, it was easy to see just how valuable they were. Thanks to that, Xian was able to live comfortably.
Did you rest well?
On the 3rd day, Mandy came to see him. Perhaps because she had rested and eaten well, Mandy's face was full of vitality.
Thanks to you. You look well too.
Thanks to you too.
Seeing as you came looking for me, it must be time to leave.
You are exactly right. There is an armored bus heading to Neo Soul in 30 minutes. We will be taking that bus.
Is it carrying mana stones?
Yes. It seems all the Mana Stones have been gathered, and they are sending them to Neo Soul.
Mana Stones were Neo Soul's most important resource. Every facility in Neo Soul ran on energy extracted from Mana Stones. Because of that, Mana Stones had to be supplied regularly. The place that played the greatest role in supplying Mana Stones was this mining city. Once the Mana Stones mined by the miners at the risk of their lives reached a certain amount, they were loaded onto an armored bus and sent to Neo Soul. As it happened, today was the day the Mana Stones gathered until now would be sent to Neo Soul. Xian nodded.
That worked out well.
If the timing had not matched, we would have had to wait at least another week. We are quite lucky.
Mandy could not hide her excitement. Xian thought even the Mana Stone mine was part of the civilized world, but not Mandy. To her, who was used to life in Neo Soul, the Mana Stone mine was no different from a remote countryside village. She wanted to enter Neo Soul as soon as possible and fully enjoy the benefits of civilization.
Take this.
She held something out to Xian.
What is it?
It is a temporary access pass.
An access pass? Then I can enter Neo Soul?
Yes, it is temporary, but entry is possible. Only for 1 month, though. After that, you will either have to obtain formal citizenship or find another method.
Well, that is enough.
Zeon accepted the access pass and examined it closely. The access pass, made of an unidentified metal, had magic engraved into it. It was something Eloy had pressured the general manager of the Mana Stone mine into giving her. It would have been impossible for the courteous Mandy. But for Eloy, who was no different from an outlaw, it was not difficult. Once Eloy recovered her strength, she caused a scene, and the exhausted general manager gave her a temporary access pass. Mandy smiled and said,
Let's go to the bus.
Let's.
Zeon rose and followed her. The two headed side by side toward the vacant lot. A large armored bus was waiting in the vacant lot. The bus was covered in all kinds of armor to protect it from monster attacks, making it look like a patchwork rag. It was far from stylish, but for safety, it was an unavoidable choice. Railings and gun mounts had been installed on the roof of the armored bus, and 5 Awakened were riding on top. Awakened had been placed there in preparation for attacks from monsters and scavengers. The rear of the armored bus was packed full of boxes containing mana stones, while the front held miners returning to Neo Sol. The miners' faces were full of excitement as they returned to Neo Sol for the first time in a while.
Over here.
When Zeon and Mandy boarded the bus, Kim Sang-sik, who had been seated in advance, waved his hand. Like Mandy, color had returned to Kim Sang-sik's face. He offered the 2 empty seats beside him.
You can sit here.
Thank you.
I will.
The 2 thanked him and sat down. Zeon sat by the window, and Mandy sat by the aisle. Once they boarded, the armored bus slowly began moving. The enormous gate of the Mana Stone mine city opened, and at last the armored bus emerged into the desert. The moment they left the gate, the air itself changed. Hotter, more stifling air pushed into the vehicle. The inside of the armored bus, which did not even have air conditioning, quickly grew hot with heat. Even so, not a single person complained. Everyone was satisfied simply by the fact that they could travel by armored bus. It was that kind of era. Everything people had once enjoyed as a matter of course was now something only those with power and money could enjoy. To the people living in the slums, air conditioning was an object from the realm of imagination. Zeon leaned his head against the window and looked outside. Then Mandy spoke to Zeon.
By the way, do you have a place to stay?
There is a house I used to live in.
If you have been away for a long time, other people may be living there.
There were no empty houses in the slums. The moment someone vacated a place, someone else took it over. No matter how much one claimed it was one's own, it was useless. There was no landowner, and there was no deed to the house. Most of the buildings had been built haphazardly from the beginning, and whenever the population increased, safety was ignored as more extensions were added, making them resemble ant nests. Even so, there were always not enough houses. Zeon smiled.
It does not matter. I can just take it back.
Instead of going through that, how about simply entering Neo Sol? You can live there for a month first and look for a way afterward.
I will think about it slowly.
Yes.
Mandy looked at Zeon's profile. Maybe because he lived in the desert for so long, he does not want a crowded place. Somehow, she felt she could understand Zeon. Mandy gave up on persuading Zeon and buried herself deep in her seat. The ride was so terrible that she could feel every vibration from the floor. Even so, she was grateful. If they could go on like this, without anything happening, they would reach Neo Sol around evening. Mandy closed her eyes just like that. Since she had nothing to do anyway, she intended to sleep. Before long, she fell into a deep sleep. She did not know how long she had slept. The bus rumbled intensely beneath her, and Mandy unconsciously opened her eyes at the vibrations shaking through her hips and back. What is it? It was too strong to think of it as the bus's vibration. Then Zeon spoke, as if he had been waiting.
You are awake. I was just about to wake you.
Why? Did something happen?
Look over there.
Zeon pointed outside the window. Mandy opened her eyes wide and looked where Zeon pointed, but all she saw was the distant horizon. And nothing in particular looked strange, Zeon said.
You will see it if you wait 5 minutes.
What?
Mandy knew very well that Zeon was not the sort of person to say pointless things, so she patiently looked outside the window. Just as Zeon had said, 5 minutes later, Mandy was able to understand the true identity of the vibration she had felt through her hips and back.
What is that?
Beyond the horizon, an enormous cloud of dust was rising. The dust cloud was rapidly approaching the armored bus, Zeon said.
They are monsters. It looks like a pack of flame wolves.
Damn it.
Mandy hurriedly rose from her seat. If that dust cloud truly had been caused by a pack of flame wolves, just as Xian said, then the armored bus was in danger. Flame wolves were raiders of the desert. They possessed the habits of both wolves and hyenas. Once they targeted prey, they chased it to the end and clung to it until it died. What made them most dangerous of all was the fact that they roamed in packs. Once they captured prey, they devoured even the bones. So if one was caught by them, one disappeared without leaving even a trace. Because of that, even high-ranking awakened were reluctant to face flame wolves. Mandy shouted.
It is a pack of flame wolves. Prepare yourselves.
At her shout, the awakened lounging leisurely on the roof of the bus sprang up in shock. One of the awakened called out.
Flame wolves.
Another swore.
Fuck.
A third confirmed.
It is real. A pack of flame wolves is charging at us.
The awakened soon discovered the flame wolf pack as well. Far in the distance, a pack of flame wolves was truly charging toward them like mad. There were so many that they could not even count them properly. At this scale, there had to be thousands. It was Mandy's first time seeing a pack of flame wolves of this size. At the sight of the flame wolf pack's charge, which radiated even madness, the awakened naturally revealed their fear. One gasped.
Insane.
Another shouted.
Run at full speed.
A third cursed.
Fuck.
Sensing danger, the bus driver floored the accelerator. The armored bus raced across the desert at tremendous speed, but the distance from the flame wolf pack did not widen at all. Instead, it shrank rapidly, Xian murmured.
They will catch up soon.
Once the flame wolf pack marked the armored bus as prey, there was no chance they would give up on their own. Xian had faced them before, so he knew very well how tenacious they were.
Damn it. I am finally going home after so long, and now monsters?
One of the miners groaned in despair. When the miners fell into panic, Mandy shouted.
If you want to live, everyone pick up a pickaxe. I am telling you to strike down the ones that shove their heads in.
Even at her shout, the miners could not pull themselves together. At that instant, Mandy's eyes changed.
Useless things.
Eloy, Mandy's other personality, had popped out. She glanced at Xian and said,
Do not blame Mandy. This is a crisis after all. If you do not like it, then you step in.
Did I say anything?
Annoying.
Eloy pouted and took out Mad Gumiho from behind her waist. At that moment, the flame wolves howled loudly. Before anyone knew it, the flame wolf pack had drawn near. Flames were wavering from the flame wolves' mouths and tails. That was where the name Flame Wolf had come from. The flame wolves that had approached the rear of the armored bus opened their mouths wide. Then streams of fire shot out.
Block them.
Ha! The awakened riding on the roof of the armored bus used skills to block the flame wolves' attacks. But because there were so many flame wolves, it was impossible to stop every attack. In the end, flames struck the armored bus with an explosive roar, causing it to shake violently. It endured only because its entire surface was covered in thick armor. If it had been an ordinary bus, it would have already melted under the tremendous heat.
These sons of bitches.
Die.
The awakened poured out their skills. The flame wolves screamed and collapsed. But the moment empty spots opened, other flame wolves filled them. That was when Eloy climbed onto the roof of the bus.
You sons of bitches, I will kill every last one of you.
Without delay, she swung Mad Gumiho. Dozens of flame wolves died from a single one of her attacks. But because there were so many flame wolves, it barely showed.
Damn it. What the hell was Neo Soul doing until the flame wolves gathered in a pack this huge? Those useless bastards.
Even as Eloy cursed Neo Soul, she ran wild. But with only her and the awakened, it was impossible to block all the flame wolves. The flame wolves clung to the armored bus. They shoved their heads through the small windows and tried to bite the people inside. In fact, several people were bitten by flame wolves and vanished before they could resist in any way. Miners screamed for help as they were dragged outside. Their cries came from outside the window, then soon disappeared. A flame wolf's head also entered the seat where Xian was sitting. Xian clicked his tongue and lightly swung his fist. The head of the flame wolf that had clung desperately to the armored bus burst apart. Xian looked out the window. Far away, he saw a gigantic being looking this way. A monster as large as 10 flame wolves combined. It was clearly the Flame Wolf Alpha. It was emitting a presence on an entirely different level from the other flame wolves. The terrifying heat emitted by the Alpha heated the air around it. The heat haze rising above its shoulders proved that fact. The Flame Wolf Alpha released a terrifying howl. It released fear. The fear crossed space and shook the bus Xian was riding in. The miners inside the bus screamed and collapsed. Their eardrums had burst, and blood was flowing from their ears. Watching that sight, Xian furrowed his brow.
You dog bastard, you are hurting my ears.
The fear unleashed by the Flame Wolf Alpha shook the minds of the awakened. An awakened gasped.
Damn it!
The awakened briefly lost their balance and staggered. By contrast, the Flame Wolves gained courage and strength from their Alpha's fear and attacked even more fiercely. The battle situation, already unfavorable, tilted even faster.
Fuck. These sons of bitches.
Eloy swept up her abundant blonde hair and spat a curse. Red blood flowed down the shaft of Mad Gumiho. She had no idea how many flame wolves she had killed. Filled with madness, she killed and killed again. Even so, the flame wolves did not decrease. When an empty spot appeared, another bastard filled it, and they charged in without fearing death. One awakened screamed as a flame wolf's teeth sank in, and he fell from the bus. Dozens of flame wolves swarmed over the fallen awakened. In an instant, the awakened became flame wolf food and vanished from the world. Yet as if that still was not enough to fill their stomachs, the flame wolves rushed in again.
I'll sweep every last one of you away.
Eloy threw Mad Gumiho into the sky. In midair, the spear instantly split into 9. When Eloy gestured, the 9 spears rose high into the air. An incredibly intense light poured from the mana connecting the 9 spears.
9 spear strike.
The strongest skill Eloy could currently use unfolded. A rain of spears crashed down upon the flame wolves rushing toward the armored bus. In an instant, hundreds of flame wolves were swept away. Eloy retrieved Mad Gumiho and breathed heavily. Its power was extreme, and so was its mana consumption. Her mana was on the verge of hitting bottom, but she could not keep resting forever. The Alpha roared, and countless flame wolves filled the empty spaces and charged again. Even though hundreds had died, it was barely noticeable.
Fuck. There's no end to them no matter how many I kill. Where the hell did all these monsters crawl out from?
She already knew the reason. The problem was that Alpha. In any monster group, once an Alpha was born, their numbers swelled greatly and their cohesion strengthened. It took only an instant for them to form a massive army. Unless the Alpha was killed, the Flame Wolves would continue to increase their strength endlessly. They had to kill it. The problem was that killing it was nearly impossible. The Flame Wolf Alpha merely watched from a distance and did not join the hunt, as if it were saying this was not the level where it should play.
I have to kill that son of a bitch.
Eloy ground her teeth. But merely defending the armored bus was already difficult, so she could not even dare attempt it. That was when it happened. A powerful wind suddenly gusted at her back. When she looked back, she saw a sand-laden wind blowing in. Thick sand covered her entire field of vision. Without thinking any further, Eloy shouted at the driver.
Drive into the sandstorm.
She did not know whether the driver had heard her, but the bus drove toward the direction the sand was blowing from. The huge armored buzz soon vanished into the sand. Even then, the flame wolves clung on stubbornly, but their numbers had decreased noticeably. Eloy swung Mad Gumiho and muttered,
At least the heavens haven't completely abandoned us.
But that sandstorm was no accident. Xian glanced back through the sand-laden wind. The bus was hidden by the thick sand-laden wind. It was the sand-laden wind he had called in. He could see the flame wolves swept into the sand-laden wind, running around in confusion. With this much, Eloy and the Awakened should be able to hold out for a while. Now he had to solve the problem. Xian used Sandwalk. As if he were skiing, Xian's body slid over the sand and flew forward. The flame wolves who discovered him roared and charged. At that instant, dozens of streams of sand formed beneath Xian's feet. Like vines climbing over a wall, the streams of sand rose up and shot straight toward the flame wolves. The flame wolves were pierced through by the streams of sand in rapid succession, dying without even managing to scream. Xian did not stop for a single moment. Hundreds of flame wolves were impaled on the streams of sand and died before they could even approach Xian. In an instant, Xian arrived before the Flame Wolf Alpha. The Flame Wolf Alpha growled, baring its teeth at Xian. The fiery light in its eyes grew thicker. With a monster's unique instinct, it had realized that Xian was dangerous. Looking at the Flame Wolf Alpha, Xian said,
You're about grade B. With just a little more time, becoming grade A wouldn't have been a problem.
Just as an awakened's grade rose, a monster's rank also rose as experience and time accumulated. The Flame Wolf Alpha before Xion's eyes was still a young wolf in its maturation stage. That meant its growth speed was just as fast. If left alone, it would quickly become grade A. If it were allowed to remain, it would clearly become a calamity. The Alpha roared. It had unleashed fear, but its fear had no effect whatsoever on Xion. Xion frowned and said,
"You're spraying spit. That's filthy."
In truth, the Flame Wolf's saliva had splattered onto Xion's chest. The Flame Wolf's saliva contained venom and corrosive components, so most protective equipment would melt and tear apart in an instant. But there was not a single mark left on the robe Xion wore. The robe Xion was wearing had been made from Leviathan's hide. It was far higher in rank and strength than the Flame Wolf Alpha. Naturally, Flame Wolf saliva could not damage it. At that moment, the Flame Wolves, sensing their Alpha's crisis, charged like mad. Their goal was only one thing: to save the Alpha, even if they died. But Xion had no intention of granting their wish.
"Summon, Sand Soldier."
At that instant, sand rose around Xion and quickly took human shape. They were sand soldiers. The number of sand soldiers created that way reached several hundred.
"Stop them."
At Xion's command, the sand soldiers moved. There was no fear and no hesitation. The sand soldiers gladly threw themselves into the Flame Wolves' jaws. They fought, killed, and died. When they suffered heavy damage, the sand soldiers crumbled like sand castles. Even so, Xion did not worry. As long as he had mana and sand, he could summon sand soldiers again as many times as he liked. Sand existed infinitely, and Xion's mana was ample. There was no problem maintaining the sand soldiers. While the sand soldiers blocked the Flame Wolves, Xion approached the Alpha. The Alpha roared, flames surging from its mouth and tail. When the Flame Wolf Alpha opened its mouth, flames of tremendous heat poured toward Xion.
"Sorry, but this much can't do any damage to me."
Xion raised his right arm. Then red light flashed from the ultra-heat gauntlet. The red light swept away the Alpha's flames in an instant. It was the ultra-heat gauntlet embedded with the red dragon's eye. It could be called the pinnacle of the fire attribute. Naturally, no flame skill worked before the ultra-heat gauntlet. In the end, what remained for the Flame Wolf Alpha was close combat, charging in directly to bite and tear. Using its overwhelming size, tremendous mass, sharp teeth, and claws as weapons, it charged in. Even before that imposing sight, enough to make one's knees go weak, Xion's expression did not change much. Just before the Flame Wolf Alpha's teeth pierced his body, a wall of sand appeared before Xion. The sand swallowed the Flame Wolf Alpha in an instant, Xion murmured.
"Sand blender."
At that instant, fine grains of sand rotated at incredible speed, grinding and dismantling everything in their path. The Flame Wolf writhed in pain and tried to escape the sand. But no matter how hard it struggled, escaping from the high-speed rotating sand was impossible. Its fur was torn away and its flesh was ripped apart. The sand dug into the flesh, pulverizing and dismantling it. The Alpha screamed under the terrible agony, but even its scream was buried beneath the grinding sound of the sand rotating at high speed. Blood sprayed, and chunks of flesh scattered. The high-speed rotating sand turned red in an instant. Even so, the sand did not stop. The Flame Wolves, fighting the sand soldiers, suddenly sensed their Alpha's death and barked loudly, tucking their tails. They had sensed the Alpha's death first. Once the Alpha, who had ruled the pack with powerful control, disappeared, the Flame Wolves scattered in every direction. Only then did Xion release the sand soldiers and the sand blender. A single red mana stone dropped to the ground where the Flame Wolf Alpha had been. Its bones, flesh, and everything that had made up its body had vanished, leaving only the mana stone that was its essence. He had dealt with a grade B monster in an instant, but there was no particular emotion on Xion's face. The road he had walked was too harsh for him to grow excited and rejoice over this much. The Flame Wolf Alpha did not even belong among the threats that could endanger him. Picking up the Flame Wolf Alpha's mana stone, Xion muttered.
"This should be worth quite a bit if I sell it."
Until now, he had not needed money. There had been no occasion to use money in the desert. The colonies outside Neo Sol were too occupied with survival to have the leisure to develop civilization. Instead of money, they used mana stones or barter as means of trade. Because of that, there had been no need to convert mana stones into money. But Neo Sol was different. No less than 10 million people lived, gathered in Neo Sol. If the people living in the slums were included, the number was close to 20 million. With so many humans crowded into such a narrow space, they naturally had no choice but to use money for transactions. The better the quality of a mana stone, the higher the price it received. In particular, a mana stone gained by killing a monster alpha like this was worth whatever the seller asked. The energy that could be obtained from it was qualitatively different from the ones mined at the mana stone mine. Xeon put the mana stone into his subspace. The flame wolf pack that had filled the area had scattered and was no longer visible. Until another alpha appeared, they would scatter into small packs and live that way.
Should I head back now?
Now that he had achieved his goal, he had to return to the armored bus. Xeon used Sandwalk and caught up to the armored bus in an instant. The armored bus was still engulfed in the sand-laden wind, so those inside had no idea what was happening outside. They could only feel that the flame wolves' attacks were gradually becoming less frequent. Xeon calmly entered the armored bus and released the sand-laden wind. When the sand that had clouded their vision disappeared, Eloy and the other awakened realized the situation.
What the hell?
The wolf bastards all ran away, didn't they?
We're alive. We're alive.
The awakened and miners embraced one another and rejoiced, but Eloy could not rejoice as purely as they did. That was because she knew the current situation was absolutely not natural. Eloy entered the bus and looked at Xeon. Xeon was sitting in a chair with his arms crossed. The scent of blood wafted strongly from him. Her sense of smell as a half-elf could not be fooled. That bastard definitely did something. Otherwise, the current situation made no sense. The problem was that she had no idea what Xeon had done. Just what the hell are you, you dogshit bastard? Neo-Soul stood tall in the middle of the desert sea like an island. Like Las Vegas, which had existed in the old days, Neo-Soul was a city that existed in the middle of the desert. What made Neo-Soul special was the existence of a mountain. For some reason, Bukan-san, which had once served as Old Soul's lungs, had been preserved intact. Thanks to that, the citizens living inside Neo-Soul could enjoy Bukan-san's greenery and fresh air to their heart's content. To the north, Bukan-san served as a barrier, while to the south, an enormous city wall had been built to protect the city. In this stable environment, Neo-Soul developed rapidly. As magic and science fused, high-rise buildings, hundreds of stories tall, the kind people could not even have dreamed of in the past, rose in rows. For Neo-Soul, this too had been an unavoidable choice. Safe land was limited, but people kept increasing. Survivors who had lived through the Great Extinction flocked to Neo-Soul in search of safety. To accommodate them, space was expanded underground, and buildings were raised endlessly toward the sky. Even so, there was a limit to how many people could be housed. In the end, Neo-Soul locked its gates. It had judged that if it accepted any more people, the city could not be maintained. Neo-Soul was closed that way, but survivors continued to gather. They made their homes beneath Neo-Soul's walls. At first, it was no more than the size of a village, but as time passed, it grew to a scale no less than Neo-Soul. As houses were built atop existing houses, and extensions were added again on top of those, the slums gradually came to resemble the Kowloon-walled city of old Hong Kong. Because of the mazes reminiscent of an ant nest, and the buildings piled up however people pleased, sunlight could hardly enter properly even in broad daylight. For some reason, monsters did not even approach Neo-Soul. And thanks to that, for over 100 years, the slums had grown to a scale no less than Neo-Soul. To enter Neo-Soul, one had to pass through the road that pierced the center of the slums. The people of the slums called this road Heaven's Road. That was because it was the only road by which one could enter Neo-Soul. But Heaven's Road was neither beautiful nor splendid like its name. If anything, it was desperate and gloomy. That was because everyone who had tried to enter Neo-Soul along Heaven's Road had met a miserable end. Only a small number of people could enter Neo-Soul through Heaven's Road, and all of them were either Neo-Soul citizens or people who had been issued passage permits. Anyone else was attacked the moment they approached the gate. A loud rumble echoed as an armored bus, ragged and tattered like a bundle of rags, appeared on Heaven's Road. The engine of the armored bus, so damaged it was a wonder it was still moving, let out ragged breaths like a person on the verge of death. The people near Heaven's Road looked at the armored bus with curious gazes. That was because it had been a long time since an armored bus had returned in such a broken state. At that moment, the armored bus stopped, and someone got off. It was a man with a dark red robe pulled low over his head. The man exchanged a few words with someone inside the bus, then turned away. The bus left for Neo Soul, and the man, left alone, stepped off Heaven's Road and entered the slums.
What the hell is that bastard?
Looks like we might get some money if we strip him.
Men gathered on one side of the slums exchanged glances. At a glance, the men had extremely delinquent eyes and faces. They swaggered toward the man who had stepped down from the armored bus.
Hey.
Let's have a little talk.
The men surrounded the man who had gotten off the armored bus and created a murderous atmosphere. They called it a conversation, but in truth, it was intimidation.
What is this about? I have no intention of talking with you.
Arrogant bastard.
One of the men shot back.
You just came back from the Manastone mine, didn't you? How much did you earn?
If you hand over everything you made, we'll let you go.
Another laughed.
What the hell is he talking about?
A third demanded.
Did this bastard get shot in the head or something?
Another added. The men's faces twisted savagely. To ordinary people, it might have been a great threat, but it stirred no particular emotion in Xion. Rather, it truly made him feel as though he had returned home, and his mood improved. The slums where he had been born and raised were this kind of place. There was no law, and there was no order. Those with power stole everything, and the weak had nowhere to complain, no matter how unjustly everything was taken from them. A barbaric world where the strong possessed everything. That was what the slums were. A very long time ago, Xion had been at the absolute bottom in this place. He had not been able to breathe loudly, nor had he been allowed to show himself before the strong. He had lived in this place like vermin for 18 years. Back then, this place had felt like hell itself. But now that he had returned after so long and received this kind of welcome, laughter came instead. The men holding knives scowled even harder.
This son of a bitch is grinning.
Let's just kill him and take everything.
The men stabbed their knives straight into Xion's abdomen. The skill of their knife work showed they had done this more than once or twice. But their knives did not leave a single wound on Xion's body. The blades had been blocked by his robe.
What the hell? An item.
Anne, awakened.
The men's eyes shook. No matter how fearless these bottom feeders were, they knew to fear an awakened. Even the lowest grade F awakened could annihilate them with a single pinky finger. The men understood immediately.
Run.
Xion lightly kicked the shin of the man right in front of him. But the aftermath was by no means light. The man flew backward with tremendous force. He screamed out. The man's shin broke and bent in a grotesque direction. After seeing that, the other men fled in different directions. There was no such thing as loyalty to comrades among them. But before they could take even a few steps, all of them were caught by Xion. As if he had used a cloning technique, Xion caught up to every one of the men in an instant and delivered a blow. The men cried out in agony. Their screams rang out across the street. But not a single person came outside. The men rolled across the ground, clutching their broken legs and arms. Xion crouched down in front of one of them. Then the man forgot even his pain and begged. The man groaned.
Please spare me.
It's the first day I've returned home. I can't go around killing people carelessly.
Thank you.
Instead, hand over everything you have.
What?
Did you not hear me? I said hand over everything you have.
At Xion's threat, the man forgot even his pain and stared blankly at him.
Don't even think about hiding anything. If I search you and something comes out, I'll break your other arm too.
The man groaned. In the end, the man handed everything he had over to Xion while crying tears and snot. Xion took everything from the other men in the same way. He felt no guilt. This was only natural here. They had attacked without recognizing the level of their opponent. So even if they died, they would have nothing to say. Still, he had not taken their lives, so they would find some way to survive on their own. Leaving the men behind, Xion moved on. The slums had not changed at all. As if time had stopped, they remained exactly as he remembered. Buildings were packed so densely that sunlight could not enter, and people walked the streets with no strength in their steps. Because there was not enough power, the lights were off in most houses. He felt gazes watching him through the windows of dark houses. The people who lived here had an uncanny talent for smelling out those with a different scent from theirs. They recognized people who did not carry the distinctive damp smell of the slums. Xion was one of those people too, someone who did not belong in the slums. That was why they were wary of him. Xian knew that too, but he did not care. He had already expected it. Xian enjoyed the atmosphere of his hometown as he walked. The place he headed toward was Shinshan, in the western district of the slums. There were many places in Neo Seoul that had inherited the place names of Old Seoul, and Shinshan was one of them. But only the name was the same. Nothing of the old Shinshan could be found there. Shinshan's other name was the Ant Nest. The Ant Nest was one of the worst regions in the slums. That was because those with the most hopeless lives, even in the slums, gathered there to live. Because of that, even the people of the slums rarely approached this place. This was Xian's hometown. He did not know whether he had been born here, but from the moment he had memory, he had always lived here. Xian stopped before a shabby building. It was a tall building over 30 stories high. He did not know how many times it had been extended, but the outer wall was different on every floor, making it look like a rag. An old building constructed in the early days of Neo Seoul, one that could collapse at any time. This was where Xian had lived. After looking up at the building for a moment, Xian went inside. The building had over 30 floors, but there was no elevator. Xian walked up the stairs. The place he reached after climbing step by step was the 18th floor. In the past, he had cursed often while climbing these stairs, but now his breathing did not grow rough at all. At last, Xian reached his intended floor and walked to the room at the end of the hallway. Room 1820. It was the place where Xian had once lived. While living here, he had obtained a mana stone by chance. A neighbor who had broken in to steal the mana stone had been killed, and because of that, he had been forced to flee to the mana stone mine. He had abandoned it because he had no choice, but the fact that this had been Xian's home did not change. Xian turned the doorknob, but it did not turn. It was locked from the inside. Having no choice, he pounded loudly on the door.
What the hell? Which bastard is it?
A moment later, someone opened the door while huffing angrily from inside. It was a man over 2 meters tall, his entire body plastered with all kinds of tattoos. He scowled and glared at Xian.
Why is a brat knocking on someone else's door without fear?
Then what are you doing in someone else's house?
What?
This is the house I used to live in.
What kind of bullshit is that, you crazy bastard? Where in the ant nest is there such a thing as your house or my house? If a house is empty, you move in and live there. That's all.
The huge man scowled. He had taken over this house only 3 years ago. The person who had lived here before him had been killed while trafficking drugs. After that, the man had moved in here and lived here ever since. Xian smiled and said,
I know that too. But since the owner has returned like this, I'd like you to vacate it as quickly as possible.
You son of a bitch.
Suddenly, the man swept his narrowed eyes over Xian's entire body. A smile appeared at the corners of his mouth, and an obscene light rose in his eyes.
You're not bad looking. Fine, just come in.
Are you vacating the house?
I said, come in first.
The man grabbed Xian's hand, pulled him inside, and locked the door. Blocking the door, he said.
Take off your pants and turn around. Then I'll let you live.
Xian clicked his tongue.
I'll have to fix the door.
What?
At that instant, Xian drove his fist hard into the man's abdomen. The man was flung outside without even managing to scream. Because of that, the hinges broke, and the door swayed precariously. Xian thought it was fortunate that at least the door had not been completely destroyed. The man clutched his stomach and vomited everything inside him. When breathing became a little easier, the man wiped his mouth and stood up.
You're dead. Do you know who I am?
The moment the man huffed and tried to approach, Xian's form vanished from his sight. The place he reappeared was right beside the man. Xian had moved at a tremendous speed the man's eyesight could not follow. Xian grabbed the man's head and slammed it straight into the wall. The impact was explosive. The wall shook and fragments flew in every direction. The man groaned in terrible pain. Xian spoke quietly.
I'm not curious about who you are at all. What I want is only for you to vacate the house like this.
The man gasped.
Please.
Answer.
He could barely speak through the pain.
Answer.
Yes.
Only then did Xian let the man go. As if satisfied with the man's answer, Xian smiled and turned around. As he closed the precariously hanging door, he murmured,
I'm finally home.
The inside of the house was far more spacious than it looked from the outside. That was because Xian's house had been built in the early days when the slums were first formed. Houses built early on were old, but they were also that much larger. Recently built houses were so cramped that 2 or 3 adults inside would fill them completely. Since the land on which houses could be built was limited, it could not be helped. Xian did not know how many times the owner had changed while he was gone. There was no way those changing owners had properly maintained the house. The inside of the house was saturated with a terrible smell. The smell of drugs, the stench of blood, and countless other foul odors were mixed together, assaulting his nose. Removing the vicious smell that had built up layer after layer over the years came first. Xian opened the windows wide to air the place out. Even so, the smell did not leave easily. Xian took out the musk sack of a one-horned elk from his subspace. The one-horned elk was a monster over 3 meters tall at the shoulder. Near its reproductive organs, it had a musk sac, an organ that produced a distinctive fragrance. If a small piece of the one-horned elk's musk sac was cut off and placed in water, an invisible gas was produced, and it had a powerful effect on eliminating all kinds of miscellaneous odors. Xian filled a wash basin with water and placed about 1/3 of the musk sac inside. Then the water began to bubble and boil, producing gas. While the gas was being produced, Xian put every piece of furniture in the house into his subspace. The furniture, filthy with all kinds of grime and badly worn, could not be reused. It was better to throw it away and bring in new things. Fortunately, Xian's subspace contained quite a lot of odds and ends he had collected while wandering the desert. One of them was the blood-sucking tree he had obtained near the lake where he had hunted Leviathan. The blood-sucking tree was both a tree and a monster. When a life form passed nearby, it extended its branches, bound the target, and sucked its blood. Once caught by the blood-sucking tree, the victim had to have their blood drained until they died. Xian killed the blood-sucking tree and took a considerable amount of the main body, the wood. Wood was a precious resource in and of itself. Once he built a frame with the blood-sucking tree and covered it with sand angler hide. A fairly decent bed and sofa were quickly made. With the remaining blood-sucking tree and sand angler hide, he repaired the broken door. In the meantime, all the air inside the house had been purified. The terrible smell that had tormented his nose disappeared entirely, and a refreshing fragrance filled the house.
Not bad.
There were still many things left to repair, but at this level, he felt he could rest comfortably for the time being without thinking about anything. Xian lay down on the bed he had made himself. It was fairly soft, making sleep come naturally. Xian did not resist the drowsiness and entrusted himself to it. He fell into a deep sleep. He did not know how long he had slept. When Xian opened his eyes again, it had grown dim outside. The slums, which had been as quiet as a dead mouse during the day, began to gain vitality at night. Starting with the electronic billboard lighting up on the outer wall of the building across from him, billboards all over the slums brightly lit the shabby back alleys. A billboard showing a crossed gun and knife meant there was a weapon shop there, and a red billboard with an obscene drawing meant there was a brothel. The building shining especially brightly was a casino. People who had not been visible during the day now appeared on the streets. Drug addicts openly dealing drugs, people lining up to enter cheap bars, prostitutes tempting passers-by. Several blocks away, a powerful explosion echoed as if a huge fight had broken out. Even so, fear or terror could not be found on anyone's face. That was because such things were everyday life here. The slums were still a place where people lived, and wherever people lived, interests inevitably existed. Moreover, this was an ultra-dense area where as many as 10 million people lived, gathered together. Naturally, the interests at stake were just as large. Wars between organizations fighting to seize those interests broke out several times a day. In this place, monsters were not the threat. The most dangerous beings in the slums were humans themselves. That was when it happened. Someone pounded roughly on Xian's door and shouted,
"I know you're in there. Get out here, you son of a bitch."
Xian recognized the owner of the voice without difficulty. It was the man he had kicked out. The man was not alone. He had brought more than 10 people with him. The man belonged to an organization called the Red Skull Gang. The Red Skull Gang was a small criminal organization based in Shinshan. Although its scale was not large, it was regarded as formidable because it was made up of ruthless bastards. The boss of the Red Skull Gang was Joe Sang-hyok. He was a grade F martial type awakened. Joe Sang-hyok, looked at room 1820 with his arms crossed. Even though his subordinates were pounding roughly on it, the door did not budge. Judging by its appearance, it looked as if it would break with a single tap. Jo-Sang-hyuk turned to the man.
Did you reinforce the door? What's wrong with it?
Come on, boss. Where would I get the money for that? It's just the door that was always there.
The man's face had turned bright red. That was because he had pounded on the door with the intention of breaking it. But the door remained perfectly fine, and the man had exhausted himself and was panting. That was when it happened. The door, which had not budged no matter how hard they had pounded, opened without a sound. Then Zeon revealed himself.
What is this?
This is the bastard. This bastard barged in out of nowhere, said it was his house, and beat me up.
The man shouted at the top of his lungs when he saw Zeon. Jo-Sang-hyuk furrowed his brow. That was because he did not like the sight of the man tattling like a child. But he was still one of his organization members. If one of his people had been beaten and he left the opponent alone, his authority would not stand. He had to teach people that anyone who touched him or his organization would bleed. Only then would people not look down on him. Jo-Sang-hyuk stepped forward.
What are you? Why did you touch my boy?
I'm the owner.
What?
He was living without permission in the place where I originally lived, so I threw him out.
Do you call that an explanation?
Jo-Sang-hyuk looked dumbfounded, but Zeon was serious.
Why would it not be? If the original owner has returned, the illegal occupant should naturally leave.
Do you have proof this is your house?
No.
Are you playing word games with me right now? You're saying this is your house without proof?
Yes.
You son of a bitch, seriously.
In the end, Jo-Sang-hyuk's anger exploded. His underlings moved first in response to his rage.
Make this bastard kneel.
This little fucker.
It was when they surrounded Zeon, swelling their bulging muscles. A series of powerful impacts echoed in rapid succession. Then the men who had surrounded Zeon collapsed like sandcastles. Their eyes had rolled back, and foam frothed at their mouths.
You were an awakened?
Jo-Sang-hyuk's eyes shook. It was impossible for an ordinary human to subdue more than 10 sturdy men in an instant. Zeon shrugged.
As you can see.
Ha! Fuck. So you got arrogant because you trusted some rat-tail little ability?
I was never arrogant.
What grade are you? Show me your rank insignia, you son of a bitch.
If I show you my rank insignia, you'll die.
What?
I said you'll die.
This bastard is bluffing.
Does it look like a bluff?
Zeon smiled. At that instant, Jo-Sang-hyuk felt a chill run through his whole body. It was a biological reaction that appeared only when one sensed a threat to one's life. This feeling was the first he had experienced since the war, with a rival organization that had risked his life not long ago. Jo-Sang-hyuk instinctively realized that Zeon's level was not ordinary. In his heart, he wanted to withdraw like this, but he could not step back. He had his pride, too.
Fuck you!
Jo-Sang-hyuk swung his large fist. As befitted a martial type awakened, his fist contained powerful force. But to Zeon's eyes, it looked far too weak. Zeon avoided Jo-Sang-hyuk's fist and struck his chest lightly. But the aftermath was by no means light. A crash thundered through the space. Jo-Sang-hyuk flew backward with a scream. His chest was deeply caved in. It was a wound severe enough that he would have died instantly if Zeon had not held back. He was alive only because he was an awakened. From a single punch by Zeon, Jo-Sang-hyuk felt pain as if his entire body were being dismantled. It felt as if all his muscles were unraveling and his organs were melting down. The focus vanished from his eyes, and he could see nothing. His senses returned only after quite some time. He coughed violently, vomiting almost a basin's worth of blood. The paralysis in his body loosened. That was when Zeon appeared before his eyes. Zeon had crouched down and met his gaze. Depthless black eyes stared quietly at him. The moment Jo-Sang-hyuk met Zeon's eyes, his own eyes shook wildly. Just looking into Zeon's eyes made it feel as if his brain would melt. It was a phenomenon caused by the difference in their ranks. Only then did Jo-Sang-hyuk realize it. The fact that his opponent was a high-ranking awakened, whom someone like him could not even dare to look upon. Grade D, no, maybe even grade C or higher. The strongest grade he could imagine was grade C. Even grade F was enough to create a small organization like his, and grade E awakened had several small organizations under their command. From grade D onward, one could even be scouted and enter Neo Soul. Jo-Sang Hayok's ultimate goal was also to enter Neo Soul. Leaving this shitty place and entering the dazzling civilized world was the dream of everyone in the slums. Zeon was someone fully qualified to enter Neo Soul. He did not know why someone like him had entered this shitty place, but it was clear that he was not someone Jo-Sang Hayok could oppose. Zeon asked,
"Do you still have a problem with me living in this house?"
No problem.
I thought so. I don't care what you do. You just need to cooperate so I can live quietly. You can promise that, right?
I promise.
Then that's enough.
Zeon smiled and stood. He could kill someone like Jo-Sang Hayok with a single movement of his pinky. But the reason he did not do so was because he knew that even if he killed Jo-Sang Hayok, others would appear like cockroaches and take his place. It was far more convenient to let Jo-Sang Hayok, who knew how frightening he was, live and manage the area. A moment later, Jo-Sang Hayok and his subordinates recovered enough strength to stand. As they were about to leave, Zeon said to them,
"It would be better not to run your mouths about what happened today. Whenever your mouth starts itching, think of this."
At that instant, a large fireball formed around Zeon's body. Jo-Sang Hayok and his subordinates gasped. Their eyes widened as if they would tear. A magic type and a flame type awakened at that. Even at the same grade, magic type awakened were treated as more precious than martial type awakened. They were further divided according to the type of magic. And among them, flame types belonged to the stronger axis. Together with lightning types, flame type magic boasted the greatest destructive power. Because of that, flame type magic awakened received precious treatment even in Neo Soul.
I will absolutely keep my mouth shut. Please don't worry.
Jo-Sang Hayok answered, his speech still slurred. His tongue, paralyzed by the enormous shock, still had not loosened. Only then did Zeon smile in satisfaction and erase the fireball.
"You must be busy, but leave me an address before you go."
An address?
You don't want to leave one?
No.
Jo-Sang Hayok hurriedly wrote down an address. Zeon checked the address and said,
"Now go."
Thank you.
Jo-Sang Hayok and his subordinates bowed deeply to Zeon, then hurriedly ran down the stairs. Once outside, Jo-Sang Hayok began beating one of his subordinates viciously. It was the subordinate who had brought them there.
You son of a bitch. What? He was nothing special. Does that look like nothing special?
I'm sorry.
The subordinate cried out as the blows fell.
Because of you, all of us almost died. And what?
I was wrong. Please spare me.
Jo-Sang Hayok stomped on the begging subordinate mercilessly. He was venting all the humiliation he had suffered from Zeon onto his subordinate. The subordinate who had once been the occupant of Zeon's house was brutally crushed and lost consciousness. Jo-Sang Hayok huffed and looked around at the other subordinates.
Make sure not a word of today gets out. If this becomes known outside, you bastards die, and I die too.
Yes.
Understood.
The subordinates answered hurriedly. Jo-Sang Hayok looked at the building where Zeon lived with a twisted face. Fuck! Of all places, why did a monster like that crawl into my territory? A sigh escaped him on its own.